Both former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and former President Donald Trump are in South Carolina today, just 4 days out from the Republican primary. In a State of the Race speech, Haley vowed to stay in past South Carolina's primary coming up on Saturday, and her team is already planning a series of stops in states across the U.S. ahead of Super Tuesday in early March. But it's not just the Republicans on the campaign trail. President Biden holding a fundraiser in California today after reporting a cash haul of $42 million in January. He's also deployed one of his top campaign officials to Michigan, re-election campaign co-chair Mitch Landrieu, attempting to quell concerns from some Arab American voters about the president's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe and CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns join us now. Caitlin, it's great to see you. Ed's here at the table. You're in South Carolina. We were just talking about President Biden's re-election campaign. That's all unfolding as the South Carolina Republican primary heats up. Nikki Haley today saying she is staying in the race. Not a surprise, but why did the campaign, Caitlin, decide to have the former ambassador make that kind of statement today, days before the primary takes place?
Yeah, Bob and Ed, good to see you both. Well, this has been a question hovering over the campaign as she is poised to lose her home state here on Saturday. She's trailing in the polls by 30 points, and she's being asked over and over again, what is your path forward? I mean, we asked her yesterday, what state can you win? And she hasn't been able to describe exactly what that path forward would be, simply saying, I'm taking this state by state. We have to let the people vote. There have only been 3 contests so far. So the campaign kind of saw this as a moment to kind of address all of those questions and make it clear that she is committed to this through Super Tuesday. What I found interesting today, she repeated a lot of what she's been saying on the campaign trail, but interestingly today she talked about her own political future, and she said, I'm not going to kiss Donald Trump's ring, and I'm not concerned about my own political future. I'm not concerned about retribution from him. So kind of making this clear that she is kind of putting her campaign as kind of the last stand against Donald Trump, even as he looks well positioned here in South Carolina and beyond.
And in response, Trump campaign's spokesman Stephen Chung issued a tweet where he used a vulgar rephrasing of Nikki Haley's comment to say she ultimately will endorse Trump, in his opinion. Turning to you, Ed O'Keefe, President Biden today was asked about who he'd rather run against, Nikki Haley or Donald Trump, and he said, I don't care. What's the real view inside the White House about this Republican race?
They know how to run against Donald Trump and win, and I think they'd like to do it again. And they continue to show the incredible ability to raise so much money in the process of doing this. $42 million in January across his campaign, and 3 other essentially joint accounts that they have with the Democratic National Committee. He's going to raise another $10 million this week at 4 different events in California, I've just been told, a sign of the kind of money that's still out there and able to be given to these 4 accounts in a way that exceeds the normal federal limits that go to a traditional campaign. They're taking full advantage of it and having him raise as much of it as he can, even at a time when he's struggling in the polls to keep pace with the former president, or at least keep ahead of him. The fact that they're able to bank away that much money on the backs of what the former president's out there doing and saying, they believe is a sign that they're ready to go the distance, and that when former President Trump, is in courtrooms come the spring and the summer and struggling to pay for his legal issues plus his campaign, they will be in better shape operationally across the country and in the battleground states to churn out the voters they need, keep the president and vice president traveling and on the air.
Caitlin, in South Carolina, former President Donald Trump is ahead in the polls, but he doesn't seem to be taking victory for granted in South Carolina. His campaign has a new ad out targeting Haley. Let's take a look.
You got bad information. I fought the gas tax in South Carolina.
Nikki Haley is proposing a hike on the state's gasoline tax.
Nikki offered a 10-cent gas tax increase in South Carolina.
Let's increase the gas tax by 10 cents over the next 3 years.
So we just heard some of that campaign ad. I hope you heard it, Caitlin. I'm not sure if you did or not, but it was about Haley's position on the gasoline tax. How is she handling this latest attack from Trump?
Yeah, and this is something she's been kind of handling over the course of her campaign here, and she has called Donald Trump a liar for this. But what's interesting here, Bob, is exactly what you know, that they are not taking, the Trump campaign, not taking South Carolina for granted. He's here today, here in Greenville, where I am. And what's interesting is that they are, continuing to call for her to get out of the race because they also want to shore up this nomination and get on to the general election and be able to compete with the fundraising for those reasons that you just mentioned. We've talked to some Trump supporters today, too, that kind of noted that the longer Haley stays in, the more difficult it is for the party to financially rally around Donald Trump. So that's kind of one instance here. But, she's ignoring all of that and continuing on. She insists that they have enough money to stay through Super Tuesday, and that's usually kind of the sign of when campaigns fold. Yes, her path is extremely uphill, and the Trump campaign released a memo today saying that the math doesn't add up for Nikki Haley, and they're hoping that, or thinking that this nomination could be wrapped up by mid-March.
Ed, what's your assessment as a veteran political reporter about Haley's decision to stay in and the possibility that she stays in through Super Tuesday? Even if she doesn't win states, is she trying to accumulate delegates? Should Trump have some kind of problem down the line, or is it something else?
That seems to be the only logical explanation at this point, that if she can keep hitting 35, 40% in some of these states, there's at least some banked away that should something happen to him between now and convention time, she's got the argument to make that, well, I was the next one accruing the next biggest pot of them. Why not consider me? Beyond that, I don't know. But I heard her say, and Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong, that I'm staying in this not just through Super Tuesday, but until every last vote has been cast in the Republican primary schedule. That would suggest going into April, May, early June even. And if she has the runway for that, then that appears to be the plan. And if she wants to continue billing herself as an insurance policy, well, okay. But that would require things to happen to the former president that may or may not happen, given the delays in his trials, as you know, that won't begin until late March at the earliest, and even then may not cause the kind of trouble that she or others might be hoping for. And what the other thing that strikes me is she continues to make almost the exact same argument she's been making the entire time, perhaps just a little sharper. I'm not one of the old guys. I won't cause chaos. I can beat the president. I can help Republicans win. But she's hitting a ceiling in South Carolina and probably everywhere else that the rest of the Republican electorate says, okay, fine, but we still want to go with him instead. So you wonder to what extent will that succeed come Super Tuesday and beyond.
Caitlin, Ed mentioned some of the looming trials, especially on the federal level, January 6th, classified records, but there is a criminal trial in New York scheduled to start in late March. The hush money payments to Stormy Daniels from 2016 now under the spotlight by the district attorney in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg. That will be a 6-week trial. Behind the scenes, maybe not in her speech today, but behind the scenes, are Haley allies talking about that trial and the possibility of a Trump conviction come April or May or June in New York as a reason to stay in through at least the early summer?
Yeah, Bob, it's really interesting because that's kind of the shift that I noticed this week. Over the course of the campaign, as you both know, Donald Trump's rivals were really hesitant to criticize him over any of these trials. In fact, came to his defense on most of them because his supporters were too. But this week we saw Nikki Haley really sharpen her attacks when it comes to the court cases, saying over and over again that he's going to be in court, not on the campaign trail. That's going to be a distraction. She hasn't really commented on the substance of the various trials and indictments, but she has, made this a key part of her stump speech here in South Carolina. The issue is, though, for her that it's not put any sort of dent in Donald Trump's support. Poll after poll shows about a 30-point lead for Donald Trump here, and those kinds of attacks just aren't, really penetrating here in South Carolina, where it very much feels more like his home state and not hers. So the play is for these Super Tuesday states, some of which have open primaries, but still it's important to remember that Donald Trump has not only such a hold on the base, but a hold on kind of state party infrastructure as well and state officials. It's been notable, too, that Haley doesn't really have many, big-time surrogates out there for her in the party. She counts that as kind of a badge of honor, but that also speaks to the way in which Donald Trump really has shored up the Republican Party in his favor. And the RNC coming later, once he's the nominee perhaps, is a good sign of that.
Caitlin Huey-Burns in South Carolina and Ed O'Keefe here in Washington. Thanks to you both.